All right, y'all. So we back with the book of Enoch again, which has been, I don't want to necessarily say controversial, but at the same time, this topic has definitely created dialogue. Let's just say that. It's created a lot of dialogue, man. And so much so it should. Whenever you introduce something that challenges something you've known your whole life, it's gonna create controversy. It's gonna create dialogue. So I think that's healthy when you do that. And I think it continues to push us forward. You know what I'm saying? So this video here, man, is the book of Enoch banned from the Bible reveals new shocking mysteries of our true history. Now, whether it's our true history or not, that's up to your judgment, basically. So we're gonna get into the video. If you new, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button and join the family. And let's see what they're talking about. Here we go.
The Book of Enoch, removed from the official Bible canon centuries ago, is once again revealing its mysteries. In a world obsessed with conspiracy theories and mysterious stories, the incredible contents of the apocryphal scriptures continue to be the focus of heated debates. Accordingly, the Book of Enoch may harbor hidden knowledge that embodies the key to mankind's true origin. But what is written in the controversial passages, and why is the content not mentioned in the official version of the Holy Scriptures? And above all, what is the true background of those supernatural experiences that Enoch witnessed with his own eyes? Let's delve deeper into the banned Bible knowledge today and uncover the truth together. Before we start, check whether you've already given us a like and a subscription. Then just write "I subscribed" in the comment section and let us know if you've heard of the Apocrypha of Enoch. We'll give the most interesting comments a heart and pin them at the top. So let's get into it. Enoch. To find out who Enoch was and which of his experiences were worthy of being recorded for history, we should first take a look at the official version of the Bible. However, when leafing through the Holy Scriptures of Christianity, it quickly becomes clear that the information available is extremely sparse. In the Old Testament, Enoch was only mentioned in passing in a short passage. The relevant passage in Genesis says that Enoch was the son of Jared. He, in turn, descended from Set, who was the third son of Adam and Eve. That Enoch was drastically different from normal people becomes clear when we consider the age ascribed to him. Accordingly, Enoch is said to have lived for almost 365 years. However, this incredible lifespan is nothing compared to the age reached by Enoch's children. Thus, the biblical figure fathered Methuselah, among other things. The so-called forefather before the flood is said to have lived to be almost 1,000 years old. The New Testament then stretches the story of Enoch a little further. The Epistle to the Hebrews emphasizes that Enoch was loved by God and was called up because of his sincere faith. But what does that mean? In detail, this means that Enoch was allowed to ascend to the kingdom of heaven without having to die. At this point, the official description of the Bible ends. If you want to know more about the background of this exciting figure and find out which supernatural experiences Enoch allegedly went through, you have to direct your attention to some other writings, the so-called apocryphal Enoch books.
And that's funny, though. And not funny meaning in a sense of humor. I'm just saying as an expression. That's funny because as a young kid, if you ever grew up in the church, I felt it so hard to understand the Bible at a young age. Based upon our religious beliefs and different things that I'm not going to get into, but based upon that, I just couldn't grasp. And yes, it was because the way it was written. Yes, it was because it was hard to kind of understand at certain ages. That's why I felt like I had to constantly revert back to it over and over to continue to gain understanding of it. And then you do have questions, or at least myself, of does it feel like certain things are missing? I remember thinking that, you know what I mean? It seems like they're kind of piecing things together. You get what I'm saying? So I remember asking myself that. So to turn around and hear somebody say, you know, this part was only mentioned sporadically throughout the Old Testament or the New Testament, it just breezed by it, makes sense to me now.
Mysterious backgrounds. Between 1947 and 1956, the Dead Sea Scrolls were rediscovered. For the history of the Hebrew Bible, this find represented nothing less than a breathtaking sensation. The ancient scrolls, hidden in various caves, deal primarily with texts with religious content. However, part of this gigantic archaeological treasure was also a vast collection that would later to become known as the Ethiopian Book of Enoch. The special feature, it is the oldest known apocalyptic writing in history. As part of their evaluation, the experts came to the conclusion that the Book of Enoch had already been prepared in the 3rd century BC. For comparison, the famous revelation of John from the New Testament is dated to be the year 95 AD. The main reason why the comprehensive collection of the Enoch story is referred to as the Ethiopian Book is that the complete work has only been preserved in the ancient Ethiopian language. This in turn has the background that the Book of Enoch is an integral part of the Ethiopian Church, which is in stark contrast to the other Jewish and Christian communities in the world. Nowhere else has the book been included in the official canon. Perhaps a look at the New Testament is more revealing, and indeed, Hebrews chapter 11 verse 5 says, "By faith Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found, because God had translated him. For before his translation he had this testimony, that he pleased God." Enlightening as these lines may first appear, they actually also raise another question. How come God loves Enoch so much that he saved him from death and brought him to himself instead? Unfortunately,
I kind of knew that question was coming too at some point in time. You know how you think something, but you don't say it out loud? I thought about that. And I thought that was me being like, and I had to question myself. I was like, seriously, bro, you really thinking that in your brain? But I can't lie that it popped up. What made Enoch so special from everyone else? You know what I mean? His faith was, we get it. They talk about his faith. He was so into his faith that God saw it and brought him up without dying. You know what I mean? But my thing was like, wow, is nobody else who had something standoutish like that? Maybe just as much faith as Enoch to do the same thing? What made him that truly special? And it's almost like a kid. You know, as a kid, I think jealousy is something, and I hate to use the term jealousy, but I think jealousy is a trait in kids that we often recognize if you have multiple young kids. One gets jealous if you give this one juice and you didn't give him juice, or you gave him cookies and you didn't give him cookies. You know what I'm saying? So that's the piece in us that makes us, that small little hint of jealousy of what makes him greater than us pops into our brains and makes us question things. You know what I'm saying? So to hear them bring that up and say that kind of tapped into a thought that I had before, bro. You know, and I thought, I was like, yo, it's sort of a moment where you got to check yourself and you're like, calm your jealousy down, bro. What's wrong with you? Why are you being jealous? You know what I mean?
Enoch so much that he saved him from death and brought him to himself instead. Unfortunately, the Bible does not give us an answer to this. So in the letter of Judas, we only learn that Enoch warned against future false teachers and denounced God's judgment. And in the Gospel of Luke, that he is mentioned in one of the genealogical trees of Jesus Christ. The amazing thing, the true information about Enoch is actually far, far more extensive. To understand this, however, we must turn to the generally accepted version of the Bible and instead examine those writings that the church firmly rejects, the apocryphal books of Enoch. Banished Knowledge. Although some Christian groups once accepted the Book of Enoch as part of their holy scriptures, over the centuries, it would be removed from the Bible canon by most churches. A particular exception, however, is the Ethiopian Church, which still regards the work as an authentic part of the Bible. Large parts of the Book of Enoch were to be recovered in the caves of Qumran in 1948. Based on this and other sources, the Ethiopian Book of Enoch was finally created. As soon as we take a closer look at the incredible content and the corresponding interpretations, you should immediately understand why the church prefers to keep the experience of Enoch silent. So now, let's dive into the banned content in more detail. Enochs Mission. Basically, the Apocrypha deals with the earthly and heavenly life of Enoch and the fall of the angels. In the introduction, we learn that the biblical figure is a prophet who is granted a preview of the coming judgment. It also says in the so-called Book of Guardians that a group of angels around the leader Simjaza decided to invade the earthly world and make the women their own. After the heavenly creatures put their plan into action and taken numerous wives, they give birth to gigantic creatures. When God sees the giants wreaking havoc on the earth, he becomes angry and decides to banish the angels from heaven and cast them into the lake of fire on the day of judgment. In order to wipe out the giants on the earth, the Lord in heaven wants to conjure up another devastating flood. This is where Enoch comes into play. In their sheer panic of God's wrath, the angels ask the prophet to beg the Creator for mercy for them. However, the Lord of the worlds refuses this request. As a result, Enoch is given the task of bringing the bad news to the fallen angels.
Wow,
Enoch's
tough.
ascension.
That's tough, man. To be even to be put in that spot as Enoch, looking at all these people suffering because of God's wrath and him being upset with what the angels came down and did and what they created, and then what they created in turn started wreaking havoc on the world, on the people. So God was upset, so here comes the flood. Then you turn and look at Enoch for help, but he's like, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this is what it is. Like, that's a tough spot to be put in for anyone.
Furthermore, the astronomical book gives us an insight into the nature of the world. Accordingly, the Earth would be a flat construct resting on pillars. The sun and moon, both suspended by threads, would orbit the central Earth. But what is the rapture of Enoch, as mentioned, all about? How did this trip go in detail? Well, to find out, we must consult another source, also apocryphal. In detail, we mean the Slavic Book of Enoch, which describes Enoch's heavenly journey in detail. Accordingly, the prophet is visited by two angels who show him the heavens. And no, that wasn't a slip of the tongue. In truth, there isn't just one heavenly realm, but 7. In the first heaven, we find the twinkling stars in the clouds. In the next heaven, the fallen angels await the judgment of God. The third heaven is again what we would call paradise in the Christian context. This is where righteous, godly souls gather, also known as Hades by many Christians. But in the north of the third heaven, there is also hell, where sinners receive their punishments. The following realm houses the sun and the moon, which pass through different gates. The fifth heaven is the realm of the guardians, in which gigantic, human-like creatures dwell. The next realms house the 7 angelic choirs that keep the world in balance. The seventh, and at the same time highest heaven, is again the seat of God. Here the Lord of the worlds is enthroned side by side with the archangels. Keep in mind, none of this is mentioned in the canon verse of the Bible, and it is widely assumed that these stories about the 7 levels of heaven were in essence made up and placed into the Bible by frauds who were looking to lead Christians astray. This isn't meant as an attack or criticism of your faith. If you choose to believe in the apocryphal books, it's merely what many traditional Christians believe to be true. In truth, we don't have much evidence swaying us in either direction, as much of that history has been lost to time. The only thing we know for certain is that many historians do not believe the apocryphal books were truly inspired by God, as the rest of the Bible is proven to be. The Ascension. Arriving before the divine throne, Enoch is given the task of writing down everything that the Creator dictates to him. In just 30 days, the prophet completed 360 books. Then he learned how God created the earth. Enoch then returns to the mortal world to tell his sons about what he has experienced and to bring them the books. After Enoch had admonished his relatives and the elders of the people to lead a life pleasing to God and warned against sin, the final step follows. Enoch is taken up to the highest of the 7 heavens. Terrifying interpretations. That the things that Enoch experienced according to the apocryphal writings were not of this world in the truest sense of the word, but what could have persuaded the church over the centuries to banish the book of Enoch from the Bible once and for all. If you like, the passages give us a profound insight into the power and righteousness of God. Well, some, let's say, alternative circles, believe that the book of Enoch had been removed from the scriptures because it sheds a whole new light on the true background of our Creator and His home. According to these theories, Enoch did not experience a heavenly journey in the classic Bible sense, but to put it casually, an uncanny encounter of the third kind. But first things first, basically, the supporters of pre-astronautics assume that the ancients were visited again and again by extraterrestrial, technologically superior intelligences. Without knowing the technical background of these incidents, the ancients would have tried to explain these encounters by putting them in a supernatural, religious context, or in other words, what is known in Scripture as the creation story was actually the result of a genetic experiment. The appearance of God described in the Tanakh had more in common with a UFO landing than with a divine revelation, and the supposed angels descending from heaven were extraterrestrial astronauts.
See, that's my only beef though right there. Why not give people a chance to make that decision for themselves? Don't remove it. Let them make the decision. You got to give them all the information. If he experienced that, then let us know he experienced that. But then when we're out here discovering artifacts and different things and findings and discoveries on walls that resemble aliens, and we're trying to find answers to that, when you already have some sort of answers or reference of somebody experiencing or coming in contact with something possibly, we could revert, once we find that stuff, revert back to this and say, wow, does this line up and match up? Maybe he was right. But when you remove that, you kind of leave us for room for our own interpretation. And then you know how our brains and our minds work. Y'all have seen mine on display. I could really tap into some otherworldly thoughts. You know what I'm saying? So you have to give us that opportunity to look and make that decision for ourselves. You can't just, I just hate the fact that they remove stuff.
Divine aliens? Yes, according to this theory, the secret writings of Enoch confirm the theories about ancient alien visitors. Remember, the parascience of pre-astronautics is based on the belief that the ancient were regularly visited by extraterrestrial intelligences. But how do God, fallen angels, and bloodthirsty giants reconcile the views of this theory? Well, this is because the pre-astronauts have a slightly different interpretation of the events recorded in the Book of Enoch. In this theory, the creatures that described on Earth and mingled with women were not biblical servants of God, but aliens. The figure referred to as God in the Book of Enoch was in fact not the heavenly creator, but the head of the extraterrestrial species. The rapture of Enoch to paradise thus had less in common with an ascension to heaven than with the classic alien abduction. So what Enoch saw during his journey was either a spaceship of extraterrestrial beings or their home planet. The flood that was conjured up by God could therefore have been the result of a highly developed extraterrestrial weapon. At first glance, it seems very difficult to place the events described in the Book of Enoch in such a cosmic context. In fact, the collection of writings also contains a passage that touches on this area, at least to a certain extent. Although the so-called astronomical book does not speak of aliens and spaceships, it still gives us an impression of how our planet and its galactic neighborhood are structured. As a result, the Earth is not an almost spherical celestial body, but a flat disk. In addition, our earthly homeland does not revolve around the sun. Instead, it is the sun that orbits the Earth. Anyone who actually believes in the pre-astronomical background of the Enoch story will sooner or later come across a central question. Why have the aliens not visited us since ancient times? After all, they have made themselves known to mankind openly in the past, so that they were worshipped as heavenly beings by the inhabitants of the earth. Some supporters of this parascience believe that another visit from extraterrestrial intelligence is imminent because they are watching us all the time. Given the current evolution of our species, the aliens may believe that we humans are in danger of wiping ourselves out. Accordingly, with the development of atomic bombs and the like, we have now reached an explosive technical age. So according to pre-astronauts, it won't be long before the currently invisible observers will put us back on the right path. So folks, let us know what you think. How do you think we should interpret the contents of the Book of Enoch? Do you think it's possible that God and the angels are actually extraterrestrial beings? We are curious about your opinion. Please.
I'm not going to say whether or not they're extraterrestrial beings. I think that's stepping in on on and infringing on people's religious beliefs, and I'm not going to do that. All I would definitely say is look into things. Don't shut it off. You know what I mean? Accept the information. Accept the information. Like, the person or the people who chose for that to be in it, not be in the book, they're just like me and you. Who gives a person the right to withhold that information from us? That's all. That's my only gripe with it. You know, give the people the information and let them do with it what they please. You know, whether or not they want to see it as that, whether or not they want to dig into the different levels of heaven that they're now hearing about that they never heard. Because as long as I was growing up, I only heard of heaven and hell. That was it. That was it. But now hearing that, it brings you in a little more to dig deeper and find out, okay, well, what did, and why not look into Enoch if he was God's trusted, you know what I mean? Had the most faith. So if you're a person that's struggling in faith, wouldn't you want to turn to somebody who had the highest amount of faith to where God noticed him and pulled him in without dying? That's the person, if I'm lacking in the faith category, I would want to kind of study and see and get and read up on and learn from. That's the way we were taught how to do things. If you wanted to learn how to do something, you seek the person that was the best. We look at Michael Jordan because he was at the time, the best. LeBron James, the best. So those are the people you study. Steph Curry, the best shooter. You want to be a great shooter, you study Steph Curry. So if you want to have that utmost faith, that the greatest faith, you might want to look into Enoch. But I'm off my little soapbox, man. Y'all get at me in the comment section. Let me know what you thought of this video. And stick around and stay tuned. The next one, I'm gone. Peace.